So time then for the press preview. It's our first look at what is on the front of Saturday's papers. It's time to check out the headlines tonight with the Daily Mirror columnist Susie Boniface and the former Conservative Special Advisor Anita Boateng. They'll be with us from now until just before midnight. Great to see you both on this very hot evening. We'll chat in a second after we've had a look at the front pages for you, starting with the Eye, which declares race is on. Sunak starts Tory leader scramble. The Guardian keeping it simple, proclaiming let battle begin. And the Times highlights Mr Sunak's campaign launch video in which he told prospective voters not to believe what he called the fairy tale of higher spending and lower taxes being able to coexist. On to the Telegraph, quoting a description of Mr Sunak as the serious candidate. The FT hears that the former Chancellor is being accused of treachery by allies of Boris Johnson, who claim his resignation on Tuesday night was a deliberate precursor to launching his campaign today. There are more accusations of skullduggery in the Mail, which says that voters in northern Redwall constituencies are angry with many of their MPs for turning against Mr Johnson. The Mirror reports on the very sad, untimely death of Catholic priest Father Dermot Donnelly, who was the brother of the TV presenter Dec. And Father Donnelly's passing is also on the front of the Sun. And don't forget, by scanning the QR code that you can see on screen during the programme, you can check out the front pages of the papers while you watch us discussing them. And, as I say, I'm joined tonight by Susie Boniface and Anita Boateng. Great to see you both this evening. Thank you very much for joining us. And perhaps, Susie, we can start by just reflecting on what an incredible week it's been.
Has it only been a week? It feels like about a century since Monday came round.
Really does, doesn't it? And we're looking at the front of the Guardian, Susie. Their headline, very simple, sums it up, doesn't it? Let battle begin.
Yeah, so all the Tories runners and riders, they all seem to be going for it now. And the fundamental problem, we're going to probably discuss this later on, but the fundamental problem is, in the Conservative Party, you've got a large number of people who were on the front benches who want to crack at it. You've got a lot of people who were kept out of the limelight on the back benches. They want to crack at it. People who want a job in government are going for the leadership in order that their support could be picked off by a contender and they get offered a job in order to back their campaign later on. And the fundamental issue is that because Boris Johnson, for better or worse, was such a massive character, and such a he kind of became a black hole. He had his own gravitational mass. He sort of sucked the rest of the Conservative Party in, if you like, and no one else had the heat or the light or the oxygen that they needed to grow and to form a base of their own or to become rivals to him potentially. And that worked in his favour. But now the Conservative Party needs a new leader. They don't have very many to choose from. It's got these little teeny tiny little saplings that have never really dipped their toes in the water. And we've seen it today with Rishi Sunak supposedly having this slick PR video. He sounds like he's doing a CBeebies bedtime story. Now, I can't tell you a fairy tale, but Rishi is ready to govern. Do me solid.
So yeah, it doesn't sound like you're ready for Rishi, Susie. Anita, let's have a look at the front page of the Eye. Same theme, really. Race is on. Sunak starts Tory leader scramble. A few have already put their hats into the ring. More to come. I mean, do you think anyone on the list does have the personality to pull this off? Obviously, we've got Rishi Sunak, Tom Tugendhat, Suella Braverman, Nadeem Zahawi, Ben Wallace. He's the bookie's favourite at the moment.
I think these are all enormous personalities who have a lot to offer the party. And I've got to say, I'm quite excited about the variety of candidates, both in terms of their backgrounds, their ethnicities, their gender. I mean, Labour could only hope to have such a diverse slate of potential prime ministers. And I think that Boris Johnson obviously was a huge and will continue to be a huge figure in the Conservative Party. But the fact that cabinets, which are by nature pretty anonymous for most people that don't spend their time watching political press preview programs. The fact that some of them, like Rishi Sunak, have such significant profiles, I think stands them in good stead for this election contest.
Well, it's interesting that we were in Cheshire, Anita, today, interviewing Conservative voters, interviewing Conservative Party members as well, and at least one of them said to us, "Well, he's going to back whoever Boris backs," and he's pretty angry at what's happened.
Well, yes, certainly. I think that, you've got sort of the front page of the Mail that's reporting kind of similar sentiments about the feeling that Boris Johnson was not afforded courtesy, and these things are never nice. Regicide never is. But I think the Conservative Party is very good at moving on in general. We're pretty ruthless about wanting to be electorally viable. And I think the Prime Minister, Boris Johnson, you can clearly see a sense that there are some recriminations and some disquiet amongst his supporters. But I think that Boris Johnson, it's only been, I can't even remember, a day, 2 days since his resignation. And as such, I think the party will, with the support of Boris Johnson, be able to move on to being fulsomely behind the new Prime Minister.
Yeah, it was only Tuesday evening, wasn't it? Front of the Daily Mail, Susie, as Anita mentioned, there's a picture of little Rishi. It hasn't changed much, actually, has he? And of course, Keir Starmer today being told by Durham Police that he won't face any action on Beergate. And as the Mail says, as he opens the door to a coalition of chaos, voters rage over Boris toppling. I mean, what do you make of this front page?
Well, listen, I've always read the Daily Mail very carefully. I've worked for the Daily Mail. I've got a huge amount of respect for most people that work there. And it was always been the first paper that I ever read every morning because it was sort of quite definitive in its production of the news stories, whatever anyone might think about it. And in the last few weeks, I've wondered whether it's perhaps lost its finger on the pulse a bit, because even Tory voters and Boris and Brexit voters I know just do not quite chime with some of the stuff that's been going on the front page. Talking about the chaos that Labour might bring, I think is a bit rich after the week we've just had. A little bit of no chaos would be nice, just for a while. But it does seem as well, like, although they're already talking about Tory traitors and people who are, it's all getting at Boris Johnson and everything else and feeding into this sort of psychodrama that Boris was brought down, this great giant by some, subterfuge by others. No one made him lie. All right? No one has ever made anybody lie unless they had a gun to their head. So this is a self-inflicted defeat, what's happened to Boris Johnson, unfortunately. But now it seems that what's happening is there's loads of briefing coming out from Number 10. And although he's being a caretaker Prime Minister, he is absolutely not going with any support for his party to find the next leader or anything, or letting them get on with it or anything like that. He's already briefing that he doesn't like this person, he doesn't like that one, and this one's a traitor, and so-and-so's a snake. It's going to be vicious, because Boris didn't want to go, and he blames those people around him for making him have to go because they all resigned. And so they're all going to be a traitor until, even after Boris leaves, he's going to be doing this from the sidelines. You thought Theresa May on the backbenches was causing trouble. Wait till Boris gets there.
Well, Anita, I mean, how long do you think he will remain in post? We know the 1922 committee, new personnel on Monday. Will they speed up his exit, do you think?
Well, I think it's widely expected that between the 22 and the party chairman, who will sort of set out the next stage after the candidates are whittled down to 2, that this will be a sort of early to mid-September resolution. And obviously that will be confirmed on Monday. It's clear that the party knows that this is not about electing an opposition leader. That's something that Labour has the privilege of enjoying. This is about electing Prime Minister. And you want to have direction and focus as quickly as possible. I personally actually would like to see a longer contest because I think that there are lots of big questions for the party to answer. But nevertheless, I think from Monday we can expect to see possibly sort of maximum 2-week process where the candidates are whittled down from what we suspect might be at the moment ambitions of probably 40, but realistically about a dozen, down to 2 by the 21st of July.
Susie, do you think this rate? I'm just having a look at the front of the Times. Actually, don't listen to fairy tales. Sunak tells Tory voters from that video that you didn't like very much. I mean, do you think this race will come down to low taxation versus belt tightening, the very issue that caused the rift, of course, between Sunak and Boris Johnson?
Well, we're already seeing some of the candidates talking about how they're going to be bringing in immediate tax cuts. That's one of their sells. And that's probably going to play quite well with the Tory membership, who, of course, are going to be deciding our next Prime Minister. I don't know whether Rishi's suggestion that I'm not going to cut any taxes because that's just more responsible. We have to just keep doing what we are doing and you can't make me do it. I don't think that's going to, it might work in a general election kind of situation. It might work when you are an existing chancellor and you're trying to show fiscal strength and you know, the longer view and stuff. I don't think it's going to work with this electorate, these 200,000 odd people who really, really, really want to vote for tax cuts. If someone's going to come along and give them the red meat that they want, they've got to offer tax cuts, really. And I think Rishi's going to shot himself in the foot a bit by saying under him, there won't be any, because these 200,000 people, they've really not liked the high taxes that he's imposed. He can blame Boris for that if he wants, but he's got to bring in some kind of tax cut because everyone else is going to be doing that. If he doesn't, he's lost.
Anita?
Well, I just don't think that's what Rishi Sunak's saying. He's saying you can't have both, right? The cakeism that he feels has been too long a discussion in the party, where you have your cake and you eat it, just isn't possible. So what he's saying is the fairy tale is like high levels of spending and low tax. It's that dynamic that I think he's seeking to challenge in order to kind of say to the party, like, come on, let's have a mature discussion about what sound stewardship of our economy is. So, I mean, the former chancellor now has made no secret of his ambitions to cut taxes. He simply also made no secret of the fact that he doesn't want to keep adding and adding to the deficit at a time where the economy is increasingly uncertain. And I think it's that kind of nuance I think is interesting and should be part of the conversation throughout the leadership contest.
OK, and Susie, we'll just finish with the Mirror, Inside the Mirror, and the paper has been asking Red Wall voters which Tory hopefuls they recognise. They do actually know who Rishi Sunak is. He was the most recognised, followed by Sajid Javid and Foreign Secretary Liz Truss. But nobody could name Attorney General Suella Braverman, Brexit enthusiast Steve Baker, although we know he's actually not standing. He's saying that he's supporting Rishi Sunak. Also Nadeem Zahawi, Penny Mordaunt, Defence Secretary Ben Wallace. Never heard of him.
No, so this is Erdlington in South Yorkshire, a seat that was Labour for a very long time, went to the Tories in 2019. This is somewhere where, despite the fact that, you know, the London bubble does tend to say that, people elsewhere don't hear about this, they don't think about this. There are plenty of people in the country who watch the news, who listen to this. I get stopped in garden centres sometimes by someone who saw me on the press review last night and wants to talk about it at length. People do know and do care. And if they still don't know who some of these people are, then there's a huge issue there. Also, I don't know how many of the 200,000 who'll be making these choices are going to be in the Red Wall seats. Because although people may have voted for Boris and the Conservatives in 2019, did they join the party? That's a different issue, I think. Because, you know, are the Red Wallers going to be choosing the next Prime Minister for us in the way they chose the last one? Or is the next Prime Minister going to be chosen by the Conservative base in the south and in the home counties and in the slightly better off parts of the world? I think the latter is probably more likely. And so what people in Erdlington, South Yorkshire want is probably not what the Conservative Party is going to deliver them. OK, all right. We must leave it there for the moment. Plenty more coming up after the break, including children told not to play in the sun as the longest heatwave in years arrives this weekend. Discussing that and more in a couple of minutes.
Welcome back to the press preview. Susie and Anita still with us. Anita, front of the FT, a cask of rare Scotch has sold for £16 million. Each bottle from this cask will go for $36,000. Quite incredible.
I mean, these are extraordinary sums of money. I happen not to be a fan of whiskey particularly, but it's incredible that this thing that is, a huge export for us and kind of a great thing that we're proud of and that we produce in Scotland is, making these kinds of waves in the rare whiskies market, something I knew very little about and continues to know very little about. But I mean, imagine having £16 million to spend on a cask of whiskey. The mind sort of boggles. But nevertheless, quite a dramatic story. And I wonder if this is going to be signs of, the rare whiskey market continuing to boom through tougher times, and maybe people investing in rare whiskey as a place to keep money, to keep their wealth as inflation rockets. I have no idea.
No, I don't know. I mean, for those of us, for those sort of struggling with the cost of living crisis, it all seems a bit distasteful, doesn't it? And let's finish with this story, Susie, about the heat wave. We're going to have some really hot weather coming up. I had my feet in the paddling pool today. I shall be doing it again, I'm sure, over the weekend.
Yeah, it's going to be absolutely roasting. And people are quite wisely pointing out that this isn't just a bit of summer and a bit of hot sunshine like we used to. It can kill people. And we also have in this country a bit of a problem with very humid heat because of the moisture and so on in the plants around us that all gets released as well, which means there's less oxygen, which causes other problems. And they're just advising that children shouldn't be playing out between 11 and 3 when it's hottest. And they should be cooling off, obviously, and making sure, perhaps ringing around and making sure your elderly relatives are having 6 glasses of water a day, just to keep an eye on people, because people tend to think that it's just an opportunity to go out and, have a drink, lie on the grass, but people can die, and it is quite serious. And we're not used to this kind of heat in this country for this long.